Yo, how's it going? I wanted to go through, give a quick recap of Zanarkand Open 3. Kind of talk through my placement in the event, my matchups, all that good stuff. So I got 26th. I went 4 and 3. I won my first 3, lost my next 3, and then won my 7th round. But by the time it was the 7th round, the tourney was effectively over for me. You had to have you had to go 5 and 2 to have a 50% chance of clearing into top cut. And 4 and 3 was just never going to do it for me. Um, as far as how the event went, I thought the event was run pretty well. I've been in a couple online tournaments before, including one on a simulator, and in general, I think this was one of the better run ones. The first round always takes a while, but that's to be expected. They have to account for different people being at the event, or like missing without telling people they're going to miss, so on and so forth. And I thought it was a lot of fun. It was really fun to kind of chat with Travis, one of my testing partners, and kind of compare as we went through. Hilariously, we both beat the same player and probably denied them top cut. So I wanted to go through. I played Rydia Turbo for the event. I can kind of go through my thought process, but my thought process is that this deck is very, very good right now and very anti-meta. I think that against what I expect to be the top decks of the format, it has game against all of them, and its bad matchups, I expect to see less at top tables than at lower tables, and even it has ways of winning its bad matchups. It is not a linear deck in the slightest, despite being aggro. So I wanted kind of speed, the ability to finish games quickly, very high power level, but also like an interesting, fun to play deck. And I think Rydia kind of fits. It just ticks all the boxes. It's a really, really fun deck if you've never played it. And I think it's a really interesting toolbox deck now, with the addition of the Echidnas and the Kryl. So I'll do the card by card. Probably the easiest way to start. We'll start with the backups. 3 copies of Sarah, 1 copy of Kolka as your target, along with 1 copy of Lena as adjacent target. But basically, your ideal turn 1 is you go Sarah, Kolka, Kolka get Rydia, and then next turn you go like Rydia, Porum with an Amot in hand, and you're like totally set. The list is only on 8 backups. It's pretty easy to get all of these. You'll notice none of them cost 2. The reason is because you want to be able to search higher cost cards off of Sildra, because Sildra requires 2 searches. The other backups, 1 copy of Ico, searches Rydia on an EX, which is great. 1 copy of Leonora, searches one of your 2 copies of Porum on an EX. 1 copy of Matoya. I mentioned it before, I love Matoya in lists like this that are meant to be really aggressive, because it lets you... She's not always a board wipe, but in emergency she is. And in the games where she's not a board wipe, she's just good utility to have. I don't want to pay 7 for a Shantoto when Shantoto is only ever a Shantoto. Matoya is often just a Kusith, and that's good enough. Lastly, Kryl. Kryl is crazy in this list. Searchable off of Sildra, because she's a Category 4 character, so Sildra can now search for a Earth backup with relevant texts. I think the biggest change to this list is the addition to Kryl and Echidna. Basically, it lets me toolbox into any of these summons. They also mean that Sildra represents any summon in my deck, so I can go like, say I have Rydia, Porum with like Sarah, Kolka, and like just a Sildra in hand, right? I can go free cast Sildra, search out Echidna and a dead Sarah, play the Echidna, get back an Amot from the break zone, and I have protection for my field again. It allows you to kind of toolbox into like more of your one-of summons, because if you have to pitch them early or cast them, you have the ability to get them back so much easier. And then Echidna is so crazy. I didn't really think I would animate him that much. I thought a lot of time he would just be 2 CP, flop him for a summon in your break zone. But I had one match against Soiree where he blocked like twice in the same combat phase, and each time drew a card. So going over the forwards, the star of the show is of course Rydia. She's the win condition of the deck. She's very hard for a lot of decks to remove. When she's good, she's incredible. When she's not good, she's okay. Secondary star is Sophie. This is kind of the spiritual successor to Sophie Doga. Um, just with no Sophie, with no Rydia, or sorry, no Doga, one copy of Sophie and no copies of Mashuri. But Sophie kind of represents a win con by herself in a way that almost no cards do. She's very hard to interact with at the wrong time. Your opponent has to kind of interact with her on their turn, or on your turn to not take the point of damage. Or they have to like clear your field or like lots of other things. She's just so incredibly powerful. I think she's kind of getting to the point where I've built Earthwind lists without her, which she used to be the reason to play Earthwind. But I don't think that that's a detractor on the card, and this is the type of list where she really shines. As far as powering up Iridia, we have 3 copies of Porum. I have 1 of the Legend for Opus 15 and 2 of the Summon Recursion Porums. Obviously, the Summon Recursion Porum is great in a deck that's playing 20 summons, but there are matchups you want this one, and she's easy enough to toolbox into thanks to the Leonora and the Sildra that if you need this Porum, you've got access to her. Our other category 4 character, we have 3 copies of Ursula and 2 copies of Yang. Effectively, Yang, like Ursula is mostly here to revive Sophie, but she also can revive Yang. Yang, if you're a Yu-Gi-Oh player, he is Neos Alias, Elemental Hero Neos Alias. Nothing on the card matters other than the category and the job and the cost. So in the same way that Neos Alias is good because it's a Gemini light hero, Yang being a 2-cost category 4 monk is all that really matters because he can be revived with Ursula. So you can go Rydia, Ursula, revive Yang. Rydia has 6 counters. Every summon in the deck is now free castable, which is just so impossibly powerful. But also, she revives Sophie, and anything that revives Sophie is good. She also, like, just situationally is really good. You can do stuff like blanking attacks by sacrificing Yang, or if your opponent like plays a Tifa to search a cloud, you can throw the Yang at the Tifa to kill the Tifa, at which point the cloud is now offline. Just lots of little silly things that just come up more often than you think they would. Even in a deck that doesn't have, 20 monks for Ursula to kind of sacrifice to become a one-woman army. For our other cards, we've got 1 copy of Lena. Lena is searchable off of Sarah, also revives Sophie or Sarah Mobius or Porum. Sarah Mobius is in here to finish the Best Friends Club with Sophie. Also provides a nice clean out to Rydia. You can go Lena, revive Sarah Mobius. Sarah Mobius makes Lena fight Rydia because it's combat damage off of the Sarah Mobius. The Rydia dies. She's just a good catch-all card, and if you just, at worst, she's a cantrip off of your 2 backups, which comes up more often than you think it would. Sometimes you just really need to dig into your deck to find that next summon you want ready to cast. For protection, 1 copy of Orin, 1 copy of Minwoo, and 2 copies of Arciela. Pretty self-explanatory. Usually Orin is better because he's almost always alive, but there are matchups where you just Orin just isn't the right choice. Yuffie comes to mind where Minwoo can cancel, basically make Yuffie a non-factor, but Orin is he's going to get chosen and then take 1k damage if they want to do the damage elsewhere. And then Arciela kind of helps by fixing combat math. A lot of our forwards are kind of dinky, so Arciela kind of helps them get over. Makes blocking you a lot more difficult. For our summons, we're of course on the 3 copies of Amaterasu, 3 copies of Sildra, 3 copies of Leviathan 6, so we can kind of loop our Porums. And then we're on a lot of smaller numbers kind of as tech cards, but again, they're all fetchable, and these all came up and did work at different situations. So Cucullin is really good against, Samurais especially. Also does very well against Avalanche. You can blank the Barret and stop the attack from ever going through. 1 copy of Ku Sith, kind of help get back our Radias or whatever we need from a break zone. We're on a low forward count, so kind of stretching this a little further helps. Brunhilde gives you another thing to do off of a 1 Rydia, also gives us a 3rd summon color to kind of help with our Minwoo. Hecaton Shear is here to kill Althea specifically, but it also does well against Dragoons and a bunch of other matchups. Just kind of a nice card when it comes up. It came up 1 time, was pretty backbreaking when it did. I think I killed an Eodolus against Mono Fire with it. 2 copies of Mist Dragon. kind of is going to rotate in and out of formats. It'll probably always be in the deck at some number, but I think whether it's 2 or 3 depends on how graveyard aligned the format is. One copy of 3CP Titan. This card is just a house. You can do stuff like snipe 9CP Leviathan on the stack to kill it and turn it into a bounce 2. It basically says that you win combat for the rest of the turn. I used this to blank an entire combat phase. I made Echidna a forward and then tightened it to make it huge. So I drew the card off of the Echidna and nothing died, and my opponent looks at a field full of 15Ks and just oh, I can't clear that this turn. I would honestly almost consider bumping this and removing a Cactuar or something. It's that good. This card is so slept on for how good the utility is off of it. 3 Sildra, 1 Cactuar, self-explanatory. An indiscriminate break is nice. The point of damage sucks. This deck has a very hard time casting it for 3 elements, but when you need it, and there's no alternative. 1 copy of 4CP Bahamut. This is kind of like a double Brynhildr. You could go 2 Bahamut, 2 Brynhildr, or 0 Brynhildr, or 2 Brynhildr, 0 Bahamut. I kind of like one of each, but they do the same thing. 1 copy of Fenrir. Again, this kind of revives your Sophie, breaks big backups. You can use it to pop your own Echidna to play a new one. There's enough utility for the card to come up. It's easy to cast. Even just reviving a Ceremobius or a Yang is good enough in some situations. And then the 2 copies of Remora, mostly an EX burst, but also just a really good high roll card to cast with Rydia to kill something. As far as other decks I considered playing, I have a Retainer Storm list that I was considering playing. Back down to the 1 Fiona, as you can see. But I ended up not taking it, and I'll kind of go over why once I go through all of them. But I think this list is good. I think it could struggle a little bit against more aggressive decks, and also the mono win matchup's a little scary because they're so much faster than I am. That getting to the point where I feel comfortable against them is just going to be difficult. I consider taking Sky Pirates. Having played this more and more at locals, this deck is very real and very good. It's so fast. That's the biggest thing is I've gotten to the Exodia board on turn 4. Granted, with a little bit of EX help, but there's so many EXs in the list. You know, Tugabranth, the Elza, Kusith, Jote, Tyro. All of these cards search are really powerful. And with searchable board wipes left and right, the defensive options in this deck are just crazy. I think my current build has actually removed the Bismarck, and I want to say one of the Bartzes and one of the Vons to play a playset of Yuffie, and it's been extremely good. The third Yuffie has been so good. You can maybe consider cutting a Shadow Lord as well. I kind of like the Shadow Lord because it's good against in the one matchup that you can struggle with. But the fact that this deck can play this density of board wipes while also being able to go this fast. Fran is just such a crazy accelerant. And then yeah, Doom of the Living to clear and then go in for lethal is so easy to do. Yeah, I think this deck is really powerful. And I considered playing some variant of Earth Lightning. So this is the current list that I've been dabbling with. I know that there's Steve D had the Lady Lilith Melusine combo, which might need to make room for in this eventually. But kind of something like this. So going over the tier lists that I had, I still think that this holds relatively true. I thought Rydia has a good matchup against all of the top tier decks. It can easily beat all of them and shouldn't be a problem. Its kind of iffy matchups are Earth Lightning if they're on exactly Ixion, but usually they're on like one copy of Ixion, and you can like misdragon it. It's not until like tier 2 that like it starts seeing some weirder things, like Mono Water Folka is really its traditional Achilles heel. Between bounce spells and power reduction, those are the kind of things Riddy doesn't like to see. But I felt like there were two things with that. Number one is I might have slightly underestimated Mono Water, but I kind of figured what would happen would be, and I don't think I'm fully wrong on this. At lower tables, I'm more likely to see Mono Water because I think it's a really appealing deck to. I'm trying to think like what the nicest way to put this is. Players that don't expect to win the tournament. But I think if you're really looking to win, I think Mono Water is still just a little too slow, a little too fair. And I think it's a little too linear is the word. It only really does the one thing, so if the deck it's against isn't like weak to that, like say you're against like Mono Wind, I think Mono Water has just no game against Mono Wind whatsoever. Like it just outright loses every time. But yeah, so I think like the only real matchups that would be weird would be like Twins. Whoever gets established first usually wins that matchup, and then Mono Water Folka is I think the only thing that like Riddy outright loses to. I thought that my Retainer Storm list I'm a better pilot of, but it's a lot harder to play. I think Mono Wind can be a struggle, Avalanche can be a struggle. Yuffie, I don't have a convincing out to Yuffie. Like my main thing would be like trying to loop lock as much as possible to like make it not profitable to go for Yuffie against me, but I don't know if that's a game plan that I can go for, especially like they can make it a 10k first strike and they can kind of just like stall me out like Arcana style and make it impossible for me to actually get through. I have to like find like I have the one Cactuar, but like that's it. Like I'd have to go for game on the turn the Cactuar doesn't go through. I don't know. It didn't really feel like a matchup I had game against, and I did not want to play a deck that I thought that any of my top tier matchups I could lose just by existing. Sky Pirates I thought has a okay Storm matchup because you can kind of go like early Von Kites or like Fran Von Kites and kind of get a bunch of forwards down quickly. I think the Avalanche matchup is okay. I think the Soiree matchup is fine, but the Twins and the Yuffie matchup in particular I was really scared of. I think that this deck can struggle against repeated board wipes, and Yuffie can eventually just kind of over and over again ping the board, ping the board, ping the board, and it's hard for even Balthier or Vaughn to keep up with the amount of just the quantity of damage output that Yuffie can do. And then Twins, Farian is weirdly a big problem for this deck in testing, as well as Arciela being able to just freely ping kites at the start of combat, and forcing the Pinello to be there. I thought it would be okay, but I also thought it would be hard to play, and I was worried about time with this deck as well. It's very hard to. I'm a slow Sky Pirates pilot, so it's hard for me to actually get to the point where I end a tournament with it, or end a game. And I was worried about running out of time and having to take a double loss due to that if I hit like a Mono Wind Storm player, and was struggling to clear. And then Earth Lightning, I just don't do as well on mid-range decks in general. I really like decks with a much heavier control element than this, and I also fear that this doesn't have the late game against a lot of the top tier decks. So as far as matchups go, all of my run is available in Twitch VOD form at twitch.tv/ghoul02. But I can kind of go over round 1. I was up against Ice Lightning. Don't remember too much about that. Went mostly fine. Round 2, I want to say it was Turbo Discard, and that was hilarious because I went first, played a single backup. I want to say it was like a Leonora or like an Ico. And my opponent goes Laswell Warp Theodore, which is like the best thing Turbo Discard can ever do. And the match wasn't close. Like I just stomped them after that. They just didn't have a way to deal with Orin, and everything they did was like dull freezing. They had one point where they party attacked with like Theodore and something. I think it was Theodore or Laswell. And I went Rydia, cast Titan, kill Theodore, block Sophie. And then like 2 turns later, they went like Shantoto plus Shantoto and Celise, and they party attacked Shantoto Celise, and then I went, okay, cool. Amat the Celise, Sophie blocked the Shantoto, and like they just couldn't keep up at that point. Rydia just was, they couldn't clear the Rydia, and then Sophie was just hanging around way too much. Round 3 was against Mono Fire, just good stuff. They never saw Kuchaspel. You don't see Kuchaspel, they can't clear Rydia. Rydia then takes over the game. Pretty standard stuff. I went to lunch, came back, and I hit Mono Water mid range. Actually, a really sick deck. It was on stuff like it was like Mono Water with a crystal package, and they were on like Realm. They like bounced their own Ash and were using Realm to like fetch blue worms out of the deck to draw cards and like accelerate their engine. This match was actually on stream, and it sucks because so I'm playing on stream, and I get the Dream Open. I go Rydiaporum Sildra, and I go fetch out a Sarah and Echidna, and I play the Echidna pitching another water card that wasn't the Sarah, and I pass turn. On my opponent's turn, I go, okay, cool. Before you pass, Sildra, and I search out 2 more cards. And then it comes back to my turn, and I have in my hand Amaterasu Titan. My opponent has a couple backups. And I swing in. I was going second, so they were on 3 backups. And I'm like, cool, this game is over. Like, I've got everything I could ever want. They can't ever clear if they play Ash, Amaterasu. Like, the only thing that like stops me at this point is like 6 CP Leviathan, and if they're like hard casting 6 CP Leviathan, like they have to, it either has to be that or they have to be on Folka. And most mono water lists right now aren't on Folka because it's too linear. And I swing in my Rydia, and they hit Ash into damage off of 3 backups, and I can't Amaterasu or Titan in response to live. And the game was just over. They had 3 backups and 4 cards in hand, and I lost my win condition. I like start to recover a little bit, and then I have like, you know, the full board, and I have Iridia powered up again. I went like Rydia, Ursula, Yang, and then I swing the Rydia, do a point of damage, and it's 6 CP Leviathan, and they bounce the Rydia again. And it's like, you can power up Rydia 3 to 4 times, but not effectively, and not against a deck that had that much of an advantage. So I lost that match. It sucks. Like, I got a little greedy. I should have gotten the Orin down sooner, and I thought about it as I was going. I was like, man, I really should like Sildra, get an Orin down so that like they have to choose it, and like that like stops the one scenario that I lose. And I didn't play around it enough. I haven't played against Mono Water enough to like remember that like Ash is an EX. That's a thing. And like, you know, again, my mindset was I'm protected, I'm good. There's nothing that can do to me that's actually threatening anymore because I had the Titan and the Amaterasu, and that's on me. Like, it's a misplay on my part, and it sucks. I wish EX Burst used the stack so I could like do something about it, but it is what it is. Like, that's the game. I got saved by a couple EX Bursts here and there as well, I'm sure. You just remember it a lot when it hurts you more than when it helps you. Round 5, but regardless, I'm 3-1 at this point. I'm like, okay, we're good. I go to round 5, and I play Iridia Twins list. And the thing about this matchup is whoever gets the Legend Porum and Iridia down first usually wins, and they did first. And you'll notice it's pretty hard for me to clear Iridia as well. Without like some lucky EX burst. Like I can like Leviathan it back or Amora it back, and that's 3 summons in a pretty big list. And clearing both Twins and Iridia that are powered up just eventually is going to overwhelm me. If I got ahead, would have been the opposite story, but I didn't, so definitely did not play it very cleanly either. I kind of panicked trying to clear things and gave my opponent a lot of 2-for-1s I shouldn't have had access to. Definitely the worst played match of the night for me. And then, sadly, the best played match of the night for me, and I mean, I gamed out of my mind in this match. I played against Soiree, and I think this Soiree list actually made top cut, so I'm going to go ahead and load it up, because I think, no, not that. Tournament's meta. Zanarkand Open 3, yeah. I think it's this one. Yeah. This looks about right. So I'm playing against Soiree. And I get Iridia Porum down. And I swing my Iridia. Bam! Thornton into damage. Dang. Like, what am I going to do about that? And then I go my next swing. Bam! Amber into damage. So on their next turn, they had any card in their deck and any Soiree member in their hand. And then we play a little more. And I swing again, and something small. I want to say I hit like it's a non-EX burst into the damage. I'll say for the sake of argument, it's like a Shinji or something. And then I proceed to, over the course of the remaining game, in sequence, hit Amber, Tyro, Tyro. And like, those could be blank cards. And you'd struggle to beat a deck that got 5 free draws over the course of the game. When your opponent is also just perpetually searching whatever card they want out of their deck, you're not winning that game very often. Just like sad. Like I really gamed out of my mind. Like it's like anytime you hit 5 EX bursts against at a 6 damage, and like it's that close, and like I was playing from off the back foot the entire game, and like even towards the end I actually had outs in the deck to like maybe win. I like drew 2 cards off of him punching into an Echidna, and if I had 1 copy of 6 EV Leviathan in deck, so I could like cast that to protect something, and then like maybe get the last point of damage across the finish line with a Sophie. But ultimately I ran out of gas, and they managed to clear. And in the final round, I played just Earth Lightning to kind of seal the game. Play something a little bit easier. And my opponent was just playing 5 CP Golbez Turbo, which I Shantotoed once and the game was over. Kind of how that matchup goes. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoyed hearing me ramble for about 30 minutes. Hope to see y'all in the next one, and bye bye.